Right, so we're going to talk about the due process debate that is surrounding the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was deported by ICE agents last month. Mm-hmm. And it has sparked a huge backlash against the Trump administration. And there is a debate about what is going on, whether this is the violation of due process and whether due process should be respected or not. I want to start by showing you some of the things that have happened with respect to Garcia, but also make a prologue by showing the hyperbolic criticism of Trump's deportation. So, for instance, here we have two clips I'll show from Project Liberal. They draw some equivalences between Trump's deportations and Project 1938, which I find completely hyperbolic and wrong. Mm-hmm. And also they have it here in Never Again Is Now. They draw an equivalence between MS-13 members who have been incarcerated by Bukele in El Salvador with prisoners of war in the Dachau camp, which I think...
So is there a burning furnace ready for these people just outside the Kikot camp?
I think that this is
being lined up to do work.
This is completely mistaken criticism and a false equivalence. And
I was going to say false equivalence,
especially for people who want to criticize Trump, like the people involved in Project Liberal. This actually helps Trump. When
you've got any Jewish sensitivities, this
when a criticism of that is so preposterous is being put forward, it's not helping. Right. So what happened was that on March 12, ICE agents arrested Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was an illegal immigrant from El Salvador. Now, I've read a lot of newspapers and articles that describe him as an undocumented immigrant. They don't say illegal immigrant. Okay. Just putting it out for the record. So he was arrested in March the 12th, and he was deported on March 15 by the Trump administration straightforwardly to Bukele's prison. I think it's called the Terrorism Confinement Center. Right, so...
That was a nice quick turnaround, wasn't it? Wasn't it? It actually got something done.
Quick and effective.
Cold as ice.
But there are several questions regarding this, and I want to show you both sides of the equation on these issues. So, for instance, some people are talking about there being a Supreme Court ruling that orders Trump to bring him back. I think that this isn't the case, and a lot of people are saying it isn't the case. I'll show you the legal correspondent of CNN saying that this isn't actually what the Supreme
Court
watch
a decision being made almost at midnight last night.
Yes.
Which related to groups of people being sent, but not related to this individual. I think that was a federal court, wasn't it?
I thought it was the exact opposite. I thought it got to the Supreme Court about this individual dude, and they ruled, no, Trump's absolutely legally allowed to deport him.
We'll get to there, because there are people who give all kinds of numbers. Some people say 9-0 in favor of Trump. Others say 7-2 in favor of Trump. Others say that the Supreme Court is completely against Trump. So there's lots of noise at the moment with respect to what happened. But I think we do have a good answer by the CNN correspondent, who says that this is deliberately ambiguous. It isn't an order. They're saying that Trump needs to facilitate the return, the renegotiation, let's say the revisiting of the case, but they don't use the word order for legal purposes. No. Right. And what happened was also that this person, Garcia, went to the US in 2019, and even some newspapers that are critical of the Trump administration, they're saying that when he was arrested in 2019, sorry, that was when he was first arrested, he appealed that decision, and he said that if he was going to be deported, he was going to receive retaliation from MS-13 or from gangs. So his brother, who is a U.S. citizen, says that he came to the US. He tried to go to the US to avoid gang violence.
Yes.
There are questions, trying to avoid gang violence doesn't mean that you're necessarily innocent.
No.
Just saying that. Doesn't mean that necessarily that he is guilty, but it doesn't mean that he's necessarily innocent.
But he's guilty of illegally entering the US, though.
Yeah.
That's definitely the case.
Definitely the case.
That's definitely
Also, if you one way or another get mixed up with MS-13, it doesn't then give you the right to enter the US illegally, does it?
No.
Yes, but there are several questions with respect to whether he is a member or not, and whether the Trump administration was correct in bypassing several of the stages as far as with his case, which gives a lot of ground to Democrats to start presenting him as being the enemy of the rule of law and the enemy of due process.
I thought it was, I'm sure you'll get onto it, but
Yeah.
I thought it was sort of undisputed that he was in MS-13.
Well, this isn't certain because Trump circulated a photo with the tattoos on his hand, saying MS-13, which is contested. Some people say it is a Photoshop. The question is if it's so easy to dismiss, and it isn't a Photoshop, and all you need to do to that person is tell him, "Show me your hand."
Yeah, I think
Why bypass this and give so much ground to others to criticize?
I think the point is that he was arrested, and we know, from what I understand the background, apparently he beat his wife, who said it's all right now. But of course, here,
Yeah, I have stuff to show about
It's okay
this.
now.
I do have to show something.
He didn't mean
Okay.
to hurt me.
Yeah, that's right. He would have already been prosecuted in the UK under the domestic abuse regulations under the CPS, whether she said yes or no on that. But
Except if he was considered to be a member of an oppressed minority, in which case it could be frustrated.
yes, absolutely.
Colonial sentiments.
Yes.
Right. So, but there was more that followed. We have here Senator Chris Van Hollen, who flew to El Salvador, started talking with him, and there was a response from the White House, which is, where's the link here? They had an article from the New York Times that says Senator meets with wrongly deported Maryland man in El Salvador, and the White House
Crosses it out and gets
fixed it for you, New York Times. Oh, and by the way, Chris Van Hollen is not coming back, and they corrected here. They erased the wrongly. They put MS-13 illegal alien, and here they say who's never coming back. There was also a press conference. If people want to watch this, I have it here. You can click the link and watch the press conference for this case. Right. So this person had a violent history, and I have here a video that I want to show you for 20 seconds.
You did take out a temporary order of protection against your husband in 2021. Were you in fear of your husband? I have to ask it. You did take out a temporary order of protection against your husband in 2021. Were you in fear of your husband?
Husband is alive. That's all I can say.
So, were you
Okay.
victim
I'm not going to
of
push on that, apparently.
domestic abuse?
But how much hope?
So the answer to the question whether you were a victim of domestic abuse
Yeah.
is my husband is alive. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
raises
Weird
some doubt.
response.
Yeah, or a non-response. We could
Yeah,
say.
it's like saying I don't recall.
Yeah. Is he my husband? Who is he?
Yeah,
I don't know. Who am I? What's my name?
if he's from El Salvador and he's a violent person, that's it for me. Slam dunk. Why would you have him in the United States?
Yeah, so
what's the argument in favour?
the argument is that when it comes to okay, let me rephrase, sorry, because I don't want to get tongue twisted. The argument is that the conditional is true. If someone is a violent gang member from MS-13, then they should be deported. The question is whether Trump is correct in saying that he is a member of MS-13. So they could be saying that
and they're saying
unless,
what evidence did they produce?
Exactly. So they would say, for instance, that unless a particular procedure is being followed in order to establish whether someone belongs to a terrorist organization, according to Trump, whether there should be due process with respect to that. Because if the process isn't followed, they could use that for many people for all sorts of reasons. They could say, for instance, we don't like you. Well, you're pro-Hamas, and we name Hamas a terrorist organization, so you're gone. There are several concerns of that.
The issue about this is that when we see the individual, they're saying that he was wearing a baseball cap that indicated membership of a certain chapter of the a criminal organization MS-13, that he's got tattoos on there that talk about MS-13, that the T-shirt that he was wearing related to a particular chapter in Maryland. His lawyer had come to court and suggested that no, this is all New York's China chapter, and he's never been up there, and he's not connected to that. This is just an innocent mistake. It's anyone just wearing a baseball cap that he liked. And when the police suggest this is all connected, and he's had an evidence of the history, like you've said, he came across the border, he's got his wife, none of that indicate that he is actually MS-13. But there's been a deep dive into how MS-13 operates across the East Coast, and that indicates that everything about him shows that he's actually part of that chapter, and that chapter is alive and well in Maryland, not just in New York.
Okay, so Trump...
That's what I understand.
Yes, so Trump circulated this photo here, where he shows the hands, tattooed left hand of Garcia, with also MS-13 on top. And a lot of people are contesting it. A lot of people are saying that Trump is straightforwardly correct. My point is, if it's just so easy to show, why not go through the process that there is, in order so that you don't give the left an extra argument to present you as the enemy to the rule of law.
What about the argument or the angle that, regardless of whether he's in MS-13 or not, he came into the country illegally and has a record of violence, whether it's MS-13 condoned violence or not?
I think it falls under the Biden process, was that certain individuals like him were nominally granted the ability to stay if they signed certain forms, which is why they're calling him Maryland man or Maryland dad. And so that's all been repealed now by Trump as well. So he would not be allowed to stay in current circumstances, but they're saying he has a right to be here, which is why all the lawyers are jumping up going, he has a right to be here, he's Maryland dad. He can only be removed, as you say, if he is a criminal, but we don't believe he is.
I'll get to what you're saying, and I do think that, and I will get to what you're saying, but I will say that he was also deported straight into a prison. So they're saying that the Trump administration just said that he is guilty, and it's not the same deporting someone and deporting them into a prison. Okay. So they could make this argument, but I will get there, because there is to add to your point, because I do think that you have a very valid point. People who are in favor of the Constitution and people who are pro-Constitution should understand when activists are trying to use the Constitution against its purpose. So when people are trying to hide behind the ambiguity of legal texts in order to promote straightforwardly anti-national agendas, that's a big problem. And people can hide behind the Constitution in the abstract and constantly say the Constitution is, I interpret the Constitution in this case, but that's actually destroying the very culture that praises the Constitution. You can't have violent members just roaming free and have uncontrolled migration. So I think that you have a great point there. So Trump and Bukele said that they are not going to return Kilmore Armando Garcia to the U.S. after they received criticism. Stephen Miller had a strong response, who said basically that no rule of law has been violated because Trump has announced MS-13 a terrorist organization. So because he is associated with MS-13, he doesn't have several of the provisions by the Constitution with respect to his rights. So deporting him is not unconstitutional. And I think Tom Homan has the same point. Again, they're open to the same counter argument with respect to whether this person is actually a member of MS-13 or not, and why did they have to just go straight for without they didn't have to why they didn't respect due process on that issue with respect to the court. But that seems to be the situation. And here we have CNN chief legal correspondent Paula Reed, who said that the Trump administration is not violating the Supreme Court ruling on Garcia, and she is accusing the Supreme Court of being very ambiguous so that they would help Trump hide behind that ambiguity. And that's the issue, that any kind of legal text, and I think you're the person to tell me if I'm right or wrong, and if I'm wrong, how. I think almost every legal text has a degree of ambiguity inbuilt into it, and the power with interpreting the law is incredibly strong. And I'll give you the pass, because I just want to say and draw an equivalence between what we hear here in Europe. Article 8 of the ECHR says that everyone has the right to respect for his private and family life, his home and his correspondence. And they have the second clause that says there shall be no interference by a public authority with the exercise of this right, except such as is in accordance with the law and is necessary in a democratic society in the interests of national security, public safety, or the economic well-being of the country, for the prevention of disorder or crime, for the protection of health or morals, or for the protection of the rights and freedoms of others.
And this is exactly the point I was raising last week, where I said that, if we wanted to adopt similar policies to Trump, we could do so based on those principles. And if you added that to where Trump is today, they're saying everyone has respect. Mr. Maryland man, Maryland dad, we can respect his life. However, if he is a threat to our national security, and we have deemed MS-13 to be a threat to our national security, then I'm sorry, it doesn't apply. The principle that we will look at is, as the lawyers then will go, well, hang on a minute, we probably accept that, which is what she's saying. You don't have to be returned. You facilitate it, whatever that means. But if the guy is not MS-13, then you shouldn't be able to deport him under these provisions. So why don't you prove to us these MS-13? And that's why they're showing that he is. I mean, after all, I think also he was arrested with a group of MS-13 people, wasn't it, in the back of my mind? And maybe they were his mates. Maybe he was forced to have a drink of coffee or a beer with them. I don't know. Maybe they dragged him off the street and said, unless you have a drink with us as MS-13 and wear our cap, we're gonna execute you. I don't know. I mean, but certainly there were other factors in there. And the question is, did they make a mistake? Is he just generally nice, decent Maryland, and therefore he has to go through the immigration rules? Or is he nasty, evil Mr. MS-13 man, in which we can get rid of him pretty easily?
Right. And I'll... sorry, well, you have
to... just, again, I can't help but return to the point of, regardless of whether he's in MS-13, he's a citizen of El Salvador, right? Right? Yeah. Who entered the US illegally.
Yeah.
So that's it. He gets deported. No?
He does get deported, but
I know it's more of a slam dunk. It's easier to say, oh, he's also MS-13 and violent, so...
We've got a different set of rules and laws to go for.
Yeah, but still...
what he should do.
Anyway.
Right, and I wanted to end with 2 points, because I'm conscious of time, and I didn't have that much time to expand on it, but it's okay. I think a lot of the Democrats are forgetting how hypocritical they are and how hypocritical they sound when they are talking a lot about due process, because I have here a post by Hakeem Jeffries on November the 10th of 2021 who says, lock up Kyle Rittenhouse and throw away the key, which is again the same call for violation of due process. But I want to end with just saying that I'm going to be a bit more general and a bit more abstract here without talking about the specific case. I do think that there are some people who are saying, well, the left didn't respect due process. We shouldn't respect due process as well. I don't think that this is a good argument. The same could be said for free speech, for instance. The left didn't respect free speech. What if, for instance, any kind of, what if Trump now pushes forward the hate speech law and the left is gonna, what are people gonna say, that the left didn't allow free speech, so we're okay with that. I think due process is, I personally think that it is a procedural value. It is good. It is not the only value, but it is a value, and that respecting due process is basically respecting the spirit that underpins the rule of law.
I don't think any of us are really arguing on the right that we want to remove the aspects of the rule of law. I mean, part of us are actually been campaigning to ensure it's strengthened. We're saying that the rule of law has been weakened by those who have taken extenuant circumstances, expanded the language, moved away from the principles in order to protect issues such as woke ideology, which we've seen in the courts recently, to prevent mass immigration. They've allowed it because they've changed the rules and regulations, expanded the ECHR. I don't think we're the ones who are saying we want to restrict it. We're more saying go back to the old principles and bring it back to what it was and what it was meant to be.
I completely agree with you. I think that this is definitely my side. But there are two reactions. Some people are saying, well, no, we should respect the rule of law, and the other are saying that the rule of law is the problem.
Okay.
But I side with what you said. That
Not to mention the sort of open society, George Soros funded DAs that seem to proactively pervert the course of justice of the rule of law. Just real quick to say, this Dan O'Donnell, whoever that is, directly underneath that tweet, nice.
Yeah.
What a dunk.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, just while I'm staring at it, I think they got him good.
Or maybe we become smarter and we just take over the BBC by putting all our people as executives. We introduce a new Human Rights Act that actually says it's, instead of like having woke men can be women and women can be men, you just turn around and say, no, we'll institute our rules that you can't fire anyone who has these views, for example. And then we remove them from their jobs. We change the HR people to have our views. Do it subtly, because that's what they've done. That's what they've done. Maybe it's our turn to have our HR officers in place doing our videos on equality and fairness, what that all means. And if you don't agree with it, then you can go. Perhaps if Putin had understood that and taken the BBC method, we wouldn't be where we were today because he'd have learned it more smartly. I don't know. The end of the day is we must protect our own principles, surely. Protect the fact that we're not going to go down their extreme routes. We must challenge them at every route that we've got, develop our own policies, create our principles, and return to what we see as common sense kind of democracy with our own rule of law in there that works, and not allow them to deflect from that or create images where you can turn around and say MS-13 is the same as people sitting in Auschwitz, which I find utterly, utterly appalling.
Yeah, appalling's the word for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.